Hello, soul family. I'm really excited to be back presenting this video. It's taken me a few months, if not years, of just actual research in terms of what really helps intense triggers if you're in emotional flashbacks, if you're in a CPTSD kind of flare up. I've definitely struggled with CPTSD, and the awakening that I had 5 years ago now, which is crazy, is what led me to understand all of this, unpack all of this, and led me to my actual healing journey. So some of the tips in this video are going to be to help you before the triggers even start, to help you during, when your animal brain is turned online and you have that narrow tunnel vision where you don't have actual access to your rational brain, and then afterwards to discharge that energy. So I want you to use these tools, mix or match, combine them, just to see what resonates. Come back to this video if you are really triggered. I know I have a list of all my tools, and when I'm really triggered, it's like I just don't have availability to even remember them. So just to have this video here where my favorite tools are condensed in a little toolkit, I really hope you enjoy. So my journey the past few months has just been continuous upgrade, leveling up, retreating and going back to an intense pocket of trauma. And it's just continuing that way. I've really been enjoying taking a step back from being online so that I can really maneuver this time without feeling observed, and then I can come back and present my findings, and that feels really right. So thank you guys for being so patient, and let's jump right in. Number one is breathe. It is the number one thing that you need to do whenever you're triggered. I can hold my breath for a really long time. I can forget to breathe. I recently read a book where the author had the words JB written everywhere, which is just breathe, just to have that as a mantra. I even have a post-it on my desk that reminds me to breathe loudly. Sometimes we see sighing as being rude, so I notice that I kind of, when I really need to be going, and I'm surrounded by people, it feels weird, and I'm trying to rewire that to allow myself to take those big, deep, conscious breaths. Another breath that I really like is the 4 to 8 combo, which is 4 seconds inhale, 8 seconds exhale, because if you focus on more time on the exhale, you are learning how to regulate and kicking from sympathetic nervous system to parasympathetic nervous system, which is going to deactivate that animal brain and bring you back to being the whole person that has access to all of the parts of your brain. Tip number 2 is to find a safe space. Some of our triggers will involve other people, and your safe space might look like announcing that you need some time alone, or going to get some fresh air, going into your room. Some of your CPTSD triggers might involve neglect, abandonment, and extreme isolation. You can also find a safe space with other people. If you are around a ton of people and your triggers involve that, you can also find ways to find safe spaces. You can close your eyes, you can imagine that you are in a safe space. You can use headphones, which really help me cut off the sensory experience of all the noise or chaos around me, especially if like I'm at an airport or somewhere that you can't really go outside. You can put headphones in and listen to ambient sounds or something that calms you down and recreate. It's like your pop-up shop safe space. Number 3 is movement. My 3 favorite movements are dancing, resistance training, and walking outside. Dancing has the expressive element to it, so it's a double combo. You can move emotions as you dance, and it also increases your heart rate and gets that cardio. It can also lead to breakthroughs at times. If you really get a good dance session, it can be just like any other healing modality. Resistance training I love because one common struggle with CPTSD is not having your own sense of identity, your own personhood, struggling with weak boundaries, and resistance training is amazing for letting you feel your muscle boundary, to also build up that sense of structure from within. My 3rd favorite movement is to go for a walk outside. I listened to a podcast where the guy was saying that anybody who has a problem if you just say, go for a walk, and when you come back, call me and we can talk about it. 9 times out of 10, the person doesn't need to talk anymore, or they're able to just get into a different headspace, a different perspective. So many of these tools are about getting out of the sympathetic nervous system, getting into a different headspace. Number 4 is expression. Naming it, saying it to someone, naming the feeling or the sensation, writing it down. If your trigger involves anger or hurt from the past, you might write it in a letter that you never send. You might dance it out. You might cry and express and sob and scream into a pillow. Crying is obviously my favorite form of expressing, because with as far as I've come in terms of doing my own internal work, there are times where my triggers come up, and some of these tools will help you get into that, like, what is this? I don't really even know what this is. And so you can use your tool to start going from numbness and disassociation into figuring out what the hell is coming up. And there are other times, thankfully, due to my experience and the inner trust that my parts have built up, I know exactly what it is, and it just comes right to the surface, and it's available, and I can just cry it out. If it's already kind of on the surface, expression can really help you just going the little extra bit that you need to get that energy to move. Number 5 is a tool that you can use when you don't need to do internal work. You don't need to figure out what the trigger is. You need a goddamn break. You just need to sleep, finally have a good night's rest, or just calm yourself without having to do the mental gymnastics. A friend recommended to me CBD and pharma gabba, the combo. I personally take 1 dropper of the CBD and 2 pharma gabba pills. And at first I wasn't sold on it. I didn't really feel much. And then I started to realize that after a little bit, maybe 15 to 20 minutes after taking it, I would do the which anybody in healing work knows that big sigh means the body is just moved something and is coming back into the vagus nerve. So it's a really good sign. And since then, I am sold on it. Number 6 is music. For me, music, other than the actual instrumental piece, it's really about the lyrics. It's really the poetry that's in music that it gets the closest to expressing the feelings that I'm dealing with than anything else that I see around me. So I can use those lyrics and the dark violins to get me into a space to really release and cry. Another way I like to use music is more of a soothing. I've recently discovered Beautiful Chorus. You really use sound healing, and they use like mantras and really beautiful things. And I listen to it and I can tell that my energy is like harmonizing, because the music's kind of meant to do that, but also the message that's coming through is just like so sweet. And I just feel like a little child that's being like lulled to sleep. Stay strong, move on. You have such a beautiful soul. Number 7 is meditation. It doesn't matter how long you do it. I have a video on the type of meditation that I like to do, but sometimes it's just depends on the day. Sometimes it's just sensation seeking. Sometimes it's grounding. Sometimes it's really intentional. Sometimes it's just breathing through my trigger, but like calling it meditation and sitting. It's like about just you creating that space and doing whatever you want to do with it. Number 8 is a part of my personality that I really love, and I love that I can integrate the seriousness of healing and this journey and how none of it's a joke. And at the same time, have tremendous humor about all of it. Recently, in the past few months, I've been doing like Instagram reels, just making fun, making light of what CPTSD or a spiritual awakening can feel like.
I need you to promise me that you'll be on your best behavior.
I promised other people that I'd be on my worst behavior. And I gave them my word, so.
Don't make me fire you.
You can't fire me.
What was the reason? What was the reason? What was the reason?
Bringing humor when you can, making fun of this entire situation, bursting out into laughter. Number 9 is grounding. My favorite ways to ground are to orient myself into the environment, which means pick up on smell, vision, notice the room, touch where you are, notice where you're grounded. I also have a grounding meditation that you can do if you're really triggered, just to kind of bring you back a little bit. Feet on bare ground, stomping feet, acupuncture always puts me in the rest and digest space. It's amazing. Massage therapy, which I'm learning right now in school, and also touch, like having stimulus on the skin. That can also look like a shower. Another great way to ground, which I love, is whenever I'm spiraling and I need to slow it down, it's to connect to my pet, because Peter Levine mentioned that pets are always present. They're always in their felt sense. They're always like here and for the most part calm. So when my dog is in that energy, if I enter his orbit and just mimic his breathing, lock eyes, maybe rest my head on him, I can really just enter his energy and allow that to help me ground. Number 10 is change your environment. Sometimes our energy can get chicken cooped. We can get stuck in old memories. Like for me, there are times where old memories are coming up and I almost feel like stuck, because that is largely the energy of trauma. It's that immobilization. And I'll feel stuck in my room or in my head, and it almost feels like there's no way out of that pocket. And if I just can like snap out of it, I like going to Target, because Target makes me happy. I don't need to buy anything. I just like seeing people. I like being around people. Obviously with the pandemic, there's not a lot of connecting, but socially distanced, you're just walking down the aisles and you're not feeling alone. Getting out of the house, going for a drive, changing location. Number 11 is resourcing. I've talked about it in previous videos. I use it all the time in sessions. Whenever you're doing shadow work, you want to resource in the middle or in the end. And it can look like bringing in positive imagery that makes you feel comfortable. It can look like a protector, somebody or a location that makes you feel safe, an animal, a spiritual guide, also big, wide open forest that makes me feel free and I can breathe. Things like that. And a key to kind of unlock maybe what imagery or resource you might need is to ask yourself, what do I need? Like, what's the opposite of this feeling? And then let your subconscious have an image that can make you feel that way. The next tip is just small little things when you are really in fight or flight, little tiny things that you can do. One of them is humming. That is proven to bring you back to parasympathetic. Sighing, like I said, loudly. Running your hands under cold water. Maybe even sprinkling it on your face or having a cold shower. Rescue remedy has helped me at times where it's like, I have nothing else to do, panic button, like I'm about to do something that I'm terrified of. Drinking lots of water, like I can just chug. I have like this big, gigantic water bottle and I just chug it. And also playing around with visual perception. So this is something they've discovered, brain spotting talks a lot about it, where it's like your eyes and vision. EMDR uses eyes. So focusing on your eyes, sometimes we can be locked in a specific area of our vision when we are triggered. So playing around with moving your eyes. Another trick is to imagine, like instead of being hyper-focused, like taking in the entire room, making it spacious, noticing that it's larger, it's a big picture, and that vision change actually affects your body. My next tip, which I will do as I'm talking about it, is emotional freedom technique, which is tapping. This is a tool I keep forgetting about and putting on the back burner. And then when I come back to it, I'm like, why do I do that? It's amazing. And basically there are certain acupuncture points that I'm going through right now that send a signal to your body that you're okay, that you're safe. It's a positive signal. And so when you are in distress and you send a positive signal, it's an ability to rewire. And in that rewiring, you can bring in more information. Like sometimes I like to do little affirmations. Even though I am really angry right now, I fully and completely accept myself. And so you can name the feeling while also adding the last bit on, just to normalize what's going on and that it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. and it always calms me down. Always calms me down, and it's great. It's hard to do in front of other people unless you're just like claiming it and owning it, but you can go to a bathroom, you can go to a quiet space and just run through these. My next favorite tip is to go into my body. This is really great when I'm not having access to what's going on. I do the bottoms up approach, which is like, whatever's happening, I'm going to find it in my body. It's going to be here. It's going to be somewhere. There's going to be a tension that if I just breathe into and open, it's going to unlock. So I have my little therapy tools. I have little yoga balls that I can place like in my glutes or on my back, wherever I have tension, and then just sink into those balls and breathe. I can use the yoga blocks to create like a little heart opener. I also have one of those big like balancing balls that I can just really open and starfish out on and breathe into. Like all of these ways you can throw on a yoga video, like a real slow one that allows you to get into certain positions. We hold a lot of emotions in our hips, our psoas, our glutes, things like that, but also heart, chest, shoulders, all this tension. You can really use that as a doorway in. Little body tools that I like to use to get me to calm down are my acupuncture mat, which is really cool. I love laying on it. It totally, like, if I can't sleep like during the day and I lie on that thing, I will have a nap. And the second one is like craniosacral still point, which you can put on the back of your head. Next tip is shadow work. So when you are in a trigger, you can take a moment. You can go in and do some actual healing, because some of these tools are to just get you back to a place of okayness, and some of them you can use as nuggets, as trailheads to get you to actually heal this material. And it just depends on where you're at that day and how much time you have. But things like Teal Swan's completion process, IFS, so any parts work. I also have a video on how to kind of just sit with yourself and do some shadow work that I'll also link down below. My next tip is inner child work, because all of these triggers are really our inner children crying out. They're knocking on the door and they're like, are you ready to feel me yet? Are you ready now? And when you say no, there's no judgment. It just means that you're not safe yet to feel that. But that's why those triggers continue to happen. Whatever those triggers are, maybe it's something your body keeps doing, like elevated heart rate, or maybe it's like what I used to have, which is the skin flushing that would continuously come back. Maybe it's fear and nervousness. Maybe it's just spells of rage. It's all parts of ourselves, old stuff that's trying to get integrated. So really all of the shadow work, all of these tools end in inner child work. I also did a video of how I take care of my inner child and how I work with her, and so I'll also link that one. My next tip is something I've recently discovered thanks to my friend who's studying it, and I'm obsessed. It is trauma release exercises. As we know, animals shake and discharge energy and then don't get traumatized. We, because we're so smart with our little rational brains, stop that process and don't really shake it out in this animalistic way. TRE is a set of 7 exercises that uses like muscle exhaustion and targeting the psoas muscle to lead your body to simulate that tremor and that shaking. And you can start slow at first, do it for a few minutes once a week, and then you can build up. The cool thing about it is it doesn't even come with story. You don't even have to have any emotions attached to it. But a lot of times I can get into what it is, and I've been able to process anger, like shaking in my jaw, or terror. And I think it's such a neat way to access and discharge that type of energy. My second to last tip is to know your triggers. One thing is to constantly be navigating them, but you also want to like build your understanding. What was it about the location? Maybe it's the time of day. Maybe it's the personality of the person you're dealing with. Maybe they remind you of somebody from your past. Maybe it's being alone at night. Maybe it's a certain day of the week. Maybe it's an actual event like a birthday. Know what are your triggers, and then when you're in them, you can also do that little secondary step, which is what's different now about that trigger. Taking a soldier, for example. that question would be answered by, I'm not actually on the battlefield. I'm literally in my bed right now. And that doesn't take away the symptoms, but it can reorient you to go, okay, wait, what's different now? I'm actually safe. My body is physically safe in this moment. And just build your understanding, like, what part is running the show? When I'm triggered like this, who's here? What is this part? What do they need? What do they want? What part of my life does this part represent? Building your understanding, as opposed to just kind of being a victim to constant triggers with no real understanding. My last tip is ultimately like one of my favorites, which is being with a coach or a therapist. You are able to work with intimacy, which can really be something that gets faulty after CPTSD. You can work with co-regulation, like feeling safe with another person. And you can also do stuff like EMDR, which is amazing for CPTSD. It has helped me so much. You can do things like the shadow work, and people can lead you through a process so that you don't have to do it alone. You can do the internal family systems. You can do the emotional release therapy, body work that I do, working with somebody else. It's been some of like the greatest breakthroughs that I've had. Well, that's not true. I've had so many good breakthroughs alone, but I guess it's just a different type of healing. You need both. So you guys, that was lengthy. That was long. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you got some good information about it. And I hope you keep coming back to this as a resource whenever you need it, whenever you're in one of those emotional flashbacks. Until next time, I love you. Take care.